Hey everybody, welcome back to Fresh Set. I'm Kevin and I am not Sabrina. It's just a solo one today. Sabrina is in Costa Rica. She's on vacation, taking time off that I didn't improve. So it's just going to be me. But we're still going to go through our race recap and our news. So before we do that, hit that like button, hit the subscribe buttons, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Podcast, Amazon Music, whatever it is. Follow us on X, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your socials. Like, subscribe, comment, share. It all really helps us out a lot. So, the Japanese Grand Prix, again, was at ungodly hours for us, but it wasn't so bad. It wasn't as bad as China. But there was a lot of, I guess, controversy going into this. Worried about power delivery. Again, same things with these power units. And that they were going to make it, FIA was going to make a decision on power delivery and what that's going to look like going forward. I guess now that they've got a whole month to figure that out, it makes it a little bit easier for them. There is a statement that is out by the FIA, but we'll get into that after the race. We go through the weekend. Obviously, not a lot of I guess the only thing you'd think, even outside of the free practices, was the Thursday press conferences. Max Verstappen is in a press conference, and he notices a reporter that had asked him about all the George Russell stuff in Abu Dhabi last year. And I guess he notices, that this reporter hasn't been there all year, maybe Max just didn't notice him, but he noticed him this year, or this race, and immediately said, "I'm not answering any questions until that guy leaves." And there was a whole back and forth, to which eventually, so they can get on with the press conference, this guy leaves, and then they continue on. For as much as I agree with the fact that he didn't like that question before, I mean, it's been 6 months, Max. 6? No, 4 months. It's been 4 months. Just get over it. It's done. You just don't have to answer his question. You don't have to kick him out of there. He's still got a job to do. So just, move on. Don't hold that grudge. You're not somebody who usually holds grudges, I don't think. But anyways, that's what happened. That's the only thing that really came out of press conference, and then all the free practices. There wasn't a lot. Everybody was still trying to figure out what the weekend was going to look like with their cars, how these long straights are going to affect their power delivery, and, what's that fight going to look like going into the corners. So we get into qualifying. The only real shocker out of qualifying, I think, we still have the 2 Aston Martins at the back, the 2 Cadillacs just barely above them. And normally you would have the 2 Williams, but somehow Ollie Behrman, who's been on form and who's basically gotten almost all, if not all, of Haas's points this year, out in Q1. He just couldn't put it together. I don't know exactly what was going on, but he just didn't look very fast or very confident going around Suzuka. So he's out in Q1. Then in Q2, we have Sainz, Colapinto, Lawson, Hulkenberg, and Ocon, and the shocker, Max Verstappen. I don't even think he put himself higher than 5th all qualifying, if I'm remembering correctly. And that was when, not everybody's going at full speed. They've done their first laps, and he's just in 5th. And it just so happens that Arvid Lindblad kicks him out by not a lot, if I'm not mistaken, about a tenth and a half. So it's a decent margin. And so Max didn't like his car. He wasn't liking his car all weekend. There was I don't know exactly. He said he was complaining about the rears and the tires. So he's out in Q2. Q3, we have from 10th to 1st, Lindblad in 10th, Bortoleto, who's been great all year so far. Hadjar in 8th. The Red Bulls just looked slow and sluggish all weekend long. Pierre Gasly in 7th. These, and we'll see it later on in the race recap, but the Alpines look quick. They have all year somehow. I mean, I know Colapinto's only in 15th, but Gasly's been running really well, and they look like a car that's just like on par with probably the Red Bulls. And then you have Lewis in 6th, Lando in 5th, Charles in 4th, Oscar in 3rd, and then another front row lockout for Mercedes with Kimi Antonelli taking 1st by quite a bit, almost 300ths of a second, 3/10 of a second, sorry, faster than George Russell. So he's been looking great. He looked great in practice. He's been looking great in qualifying. We'll talk about the race when we get to the race. But one thing we're noticing is the McLarens also look fast. They've started to. I think they brought an upgrade this weekend, but they've started to kind of put things together, whether it's software or hardware issues. Who knows? But something was clicking this weekend. And it was just lucky that Charles actually split the two McLarens. But now we don't have a top 4 like we always had a top 4, where it was Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, and Ferrari. Because those Red Bulls are nowhere. They're a midfield team, it looks like, at this point, until they bring something. So we'll see what happens after this whole month break, or 5-week break, whatever it's going to be. But that's basically how qualifying goes. I don't believe, if I remember correctly, we did not have anybody who switched positions. I don't think there were any penalties. No, it all stays the same. So we get to race day. Obviously, just like we said, the who's out in front. We know the Ferraris are going to be quick. We're expecting that. But we get to the race start, and who was it that was complaining? Somebody was complaining about their cut. Oh, Lando was complaining about their tires being very cold. And I think somebody else. It took a long time for those Aston Martins to get around the track to get back into their pit boxes before the start. Not pit boxes, their starting boxes before the race start procedure. And then we have our rev ups, and then lights out, ready to go, and Kimi goes nowhere. It looks like he gets off the line okay, but something. Who knows? He might have, I don't know if he double clutched or what, that's even a thing, but he looked like he wasn't changing gears. He got off the line, and then he was nothing. He was overtaken by 5 people. Leclerc automatically goes into the middle because they've got such a good start. He gets in the middle, he gets away, but surprisingly, the McLarens are also pretty much, well, Oscar is just as fast as the Ferraris, maybe a little bit slower, but I don't think he was expecting Leclerc was expecting Oscar to be so good off the start, and he was. George gets away, just normal, and then we have intense, close battles for the first probably about 8 to 10 laps. I think you have a huge fight between Russell, Oscar, who's out in front, because Oscar gets out to take the lead. His first race start of the season, and he actually gets out into the lead. And Leclerc behind him, and then George Russell behind those two. So George lost a few places. It's just because the other two got such a great start. And then we have a fight between, Kimi trying to get ahead of Lewis, who's now in 5th. And Lewis trying to get ahead of Lando, who's in 4th. Yeah. And then a whole bunch of fighting at the back. We still have Max trying to fight with Pierre. We have a bunch in the midfield. You kind of see Colapinto and Lindblad actually drops back a little bit. And so we have some fights around, that 12 to 15 spot, maybe less. Yeah, about 12 to 15. And it just keeps going on and on and on for a few laps. up until after a certain amount, like it's some back and forth racing. It's the same racing we've seen over the last two races now, where you're having that, you got that boost, you're going through that boost for the whole straight, and all of a sudden, you get ahead of somebody, but you've got nothing left for these turns. And if you're good in the corners, you're just going to gain that position back. We saw George frustrated by it time and time and time again. He could get ahead, and all of a sudden Leclerc comes right back and takes that position back. He had nothing left. I can't remember exactly when Kimi gets back ahead. Kimi gets it back ahead. Sorry, Kimi comes. No, this is what. So I'm just trying to find the pit stop summaries here. 18. So on lap 21, that's what it was. On lap 21, all teams have basically done not all of them, a few of them, depending on what race strategy they were on, have done a pit stop already. George comes in lap 21 for a pit stop, and a couple other people do, but George comes in at 21, which is his regular race or pit stop window. And then as soon as George comes out, still on lap 21, we see Ollie Bearman into the barriers. A huge crash. When you see the replays, you're not really sure exactly what happens, but he comes out from way out of the left, not on the track, across, I believe it was Colapinto, off the track in front of him into the barriers. It was apparently a 50G impact. He is shaken up when he's getting out of that car. It looks really scary. You're wondering if he broke a leg or broke an ankle or something. He's limping. Luckily, nothing. He's got a bruise or contusion on his knee, one of his knees. But he is going to be fine. Luckily he's got another 5 weeks to recover, and hopefully he'll be back in that car fairly soon, because he was one of the better racers out there so far in this year. But we find out later that the reason he goes off is he has a 50-kilometer-an-hour difference, I believe, in that section. So he's coming at full speed. He's ready to overtake. Colapinto loses all power, loses all battery. He's got nothing left, and his speed just drops 50 kilometers an hour, and Ollie has to take evasive maneuvers. We'll get into a little bit more of that afterwards, but that's what causes him to go off track and then lose control and come back on with a great amount of speed. There was at one point, I believe, Colapinto loses, I believe it was close to 100 kilometers an hour, just from that power difference or power delivery. I think it was 92 kilometer an hour difference. Between Bearman and Colapinto. That's what it was. There was a 92 kilometer difference. A kilometer an hour. Anyways, that happens on lap 21. Right away, all teams, it's yellow flag. It's not red flag, because it's far enough off the track that they didn't have to red flag the session. They had to just wait for the barriers to be fixed, but most of the debris was off track, and far enough away from the track so he could just keep it under a safety car. But as we know, under a safety car, you're going to get a cheaper pit stop, and that's where everybody starts to come in. Lap 22, most of the teams, other than the ones that had pitted on lap 21, which were George Russell, Sergio Perez, and the two Aston Martins, who were nowhere. So George is on the radio. First thing he says on the radio is, "You've got to be kidding me. This is bullshit." Most people would ask, is he okay? First, not, now he's ruined my race. What the fuck? But you know what? I'll give George a break on that one. I can't keep piling on George all the time. But even some of the teams that were not under the safety, even the Aston Martins come back in 23 and 24. So basically everybody gets to pit around that time. It was only going to be a one-stop strategy, usually. But yeah, we get that safety car. Kimi gets to pit. Kimi gets a free, cheap pit stop and gets to come out in front. So that was basically the way it stayed. I mean, we had some really good fighting between The Ferraris again. It seems to be that they like to fight each other. They like to keep it close, but not dangerous. Although they did touch, and Charles even said, "I think we did touch there. I think they did touch tires or whatever, but it was going around a point. It's not like they were trying to run each other off the track. It was more so they just didn't have the space in that part of the track to go too wide with certain speed. But they stayed on track. They kept it clean. We finished the race with Kimi again winning another one, becoming the youngest ever, the only teenager really, to lead a championship series at 19 years and whatever he is. He's now 9 points, I believe. I'll check it up after, but 9 points ahead of George. Oscar comes in second. He ran a great race. He just couldn't keep up with the speed of the Mercedes, but a well-deserved second place. Charles in third after getting a lot of back and forth battles near the end with George. George kept trying, but the Ferraris were just too fast around the corners. They had too much. They're just a more maneuverable car, it seems. George coming in fourth, excuse me. Lando was in fifth, started fifth, ended fifth, something like that. We started sixth, ended fifth. So he was okay. He wasn't really involved in much unless it was the stuff with Lewis. And then Lewis going into sixth. Pierre Gasly seventh, Max in eighth. This one was, we saw Max behind Pierre after the pit stops, and we get to about like lap 30, lap 35, and he's close. He's closer there, and you think it's just going to happen eventually. And Max can be heard on the radio just saying, "I can't. The Alpines are just too fast," which is something we've never heard in 3 years. Yeah, maybe other than Brazil 2023. But yeah, Max had nothing to catch him. He couldn't do it. This car just looks like complete dog shit, if I'm going to be honest. Liam in ninth and Ocon with the final 1 point there. And that was basically the race. There were again, it's just a lot of the same thing. The only reason we have a lot of passing is because these cars can't figure it out. I think at one point, now I don't know if it was during qualifying or if it was during the race, where George couldn't pass because the software wasn't working in his car or the battery's not working in his car. So yeah, it was just it's just a disaster of a season at the moment. But happy for Kimi. He deserved that win. He was great. He was probably the best driver all weekend. He made it work. He had a horrible start, and he was able to just put his head down and make it work. Fought off Oscar for a little bit, and then got ahead at far enough that Oscar and Leclerc could fight, and Kimi could just take off into the distance. So good on him. Good for all the pole sitters, the podium sitters. Sorry. But yeah, and that was really the race. It was a good race. I liked it. And I talked about this with Sabrina too before the episode, but I liked it, but I didn't like it. It just really felt slow at times. It really felt fake at times. I wondered why I stayed up till 3 a.m. just to watch it, but it is what it is. That's where we're at right now. We'll see what happens after this break and if they can create a better situation for what this racing is going to look like going forward. Speaking of, what they can do, the official statement from the FAA that came out shortly after most of the drivers were complaining, and I'll get into some of their complaints after. But their statement was that since their introduction, the 2026 regulations have been subject to ongoing discussions between the FIA teams, power unit manufacturers, drivers, and Formula One management. By design, these regulations include a number of adjustable parameters, particularly in relation to energy management, which allow for optimization based on real-world data. So they had absolutely no idea how this was going to work on track, obviously, and they decided they should have tested this a year before, but They had no idea, so they put in rules or regulations that allowed for us to, or them, to adjust things. So it has been the consistent position of all stakeholders that a structured review would take place after the opening phase of the season. They did have that in place before to allow for sufficient data to be gathered and analyzed. A number of meetings are therefore scheduled in April to assess the operation, blah, 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 blah. Any potential adjustments, particularly those related to engine management, require careful simulation and detailed analysis. You think they would have had a careful simulation beforehand and detailed analysis, but they didn't, or they did and they didn't care, because drivers have been saying for a long, long time that it is going to be dangerous. And now we finally have something where luckily somebody wasn't seriously injured. And then blah, 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 blah. So we'll find out more updates after. So we had a lot of people complaining after the race. I mean, one particularly vocal person was Carlos Sainz. His quote was, "I'm hopeful from Formula One management and FIA will come up with something better for Miami, given the fact that the accident with Ollie that we saw today, we've been warning about this happening, been warning them, these kinds of closing speeds and kinds of accidents were always going to happen. I'm not very happy with what we've had up until now. I hope it serves as an example." And he's right. I mean, we can't have, closing speeds when we had DRS were close enough when people were going at relatively the same speed, and you only got that extra 16 kilometer an hour boost when you open up your DRS. Now you have your active aero, but if you have enough battery and you're doing an overtake and you're also getting that extra 16 kilometers an hour from the active aero, plus you're deploying your battery quicker and to gain more power, and then the other person just completely runs out of battery that they just drop. And now I'm no physicist, frictionologist, but you're going with tires as sticky as these tires are, and you lose power and you have no throttle because even with your foot all the way down, that you're going to lose a lot of speed very quickly, very rapidly. And that's what happens. Now you're not at a 16 kilometer an hour difference. You're at 100 kilometers or close to 100, anywhere between 50 and 100 kilometers an hour, depending on how big of a difference your battery deployment is. So they have to fix it. Lando was there. Oscar was there. So Lando, especially Lando, the one who was saying he loved these cars, and everybody should just stop talking, complaining, just be happy about driving. His quote was, "Depending on what drivers do, you could have a closing speeds of 50 kilometers per hour. And when somebody hits another driver at that speed, you're going to fly over the fence and do a lot of damage to yourself and maybe others." That's pretty horrible to think about. So, even the man who came to defense of these vehicles and these cars is just not happy. And he said, somebody asked him, he says, drivers need to enjoy driving as well. He says, obviously, clearly not. That's not what Formula One management is thinking or the FIA is thinking. So, yeah, it's just, they have to figure it out. They have to figure it out quick. And they have to, hopefully that these engines, these power units, they all have enough of an adjustment. I don't even know how to word it. An adjustment window here where they can do things where it's going to be safer, where you can deploy more power so you can actually get to the end of these straights. Now, Suzuka does have some long straights, but it's still not as long as, Baku or Singapore, or at least where you don't have runoffs where you can crash safely, quote unquote, without hurting other people. Or something like Vegas, where it's the longest straight on the calendar, and you have nowhere to go. You've got barriers. You don't have a lot of runoff in Vegas. So yeah, that was the race. That's the one thing that, other than Kimi, that's the one thing everybody's talking about, is the way these cars are run and how dangerous they can be going forward. It's gotten to the point, actually we'll stick on this a little bit, it's gotten to the point where now viewership is starting to suffer. So where Formula One management has decided they want to go hybrid. They've done that for a long time, I know, but where they want to go hybrid, they want to be more environmentally conscious. Now they're pushing toward these 50% engines, plus the power delivery is different. Their viewership is now suffering, and now they're making less money because they wanted to do the right thing. If we look at some of the figures, this is specifically for the Japanese Grand Prix. Spain's DAZN or DAZN, however you pronounce it, F1 viewership dropped by half in Spain. In 2025, it was 124,000. In 2026, it's 63,000. Sorry, so dropped by half. France's Canal Plus saw a 43% decrease in viewership compared to 2025. So in 2025, there were at 705,000 people watching, or at least viewership. And in 2026, it was 404,000. The only place that is seeing an increase at this moment is, well, I shouldn't say the only place, but one of the only places that is showing a large growth is Italy. And that's because of Kimi Antonelli, and the Ferraris are pretty competitive. Their audience grew by 31%, which is reaching almost 2.5 million people. So it's all good when you're Italian, but the rest, and I'm sure that they're probably not okay with the racing. I'm sure they're just cheering on, whether it's Ferrari and Kimi, but they're not necessarily happy with the racing. I can't see a true Italian-blooded racing fan being particularly happy. I'm sure they're not even happy with the hybrid system, but that's a discussion for another time. I know it's a short one. It's hard to do this when you don't have somebody to speak with here, but one other piece of news. I kind of went through all the news throughout the what we just talked about now. The only other piece of news is that Red Bull aren't going to be Castori anymore. They're going to go Adidas. So I'm hoping we don't get a soccer effect where certain manufacturers tend to make teams look pretty similar. So hopefully their Adidas doesn't look like a Mercedes, and we get a little bit more creativity there. But coming for 2027, they will be with Adidas. At least that gear should be pretty good. My fresh set and dirty air for the weekend. My fresh set for the weekend has got to be. It's got to be. You know what? It's got to be the Ferraris. It's got to be. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give it Piastri. I'm going to give that to Piastri. Piastri was really good all weekend. Not as good as Kimi, obviously. It's easy to give it to Kimi. But Piastri had, for his first start of the season and be able to get on track for a whole race, he was phenomenal. He did what he could. He put himself into second. For a car that was not as good, was not supposed to be as good as the Ferraris and the Mercedes, he fought well. He didn't have any little bit of panic in his voice. He knew what his plan was. He thought it out, and he took it to the end with that plan. Secured himself second. I mean, yes, obviously Kimi as well, the youngest ever drivers' championship leader, and the only teenage drivers' championship leader. We'll see how long that lasts, but he looks like he's in good form. So I'll give it to both of them. My dirty air. Oh, my dirty air has got to be, I can say the regulations. It's just the easiest one. You're putting people at risk. You're putting people in danger. You're putting, just the drivers, obviously. They're the first ones there. You're putting event staff in danger if for whatever reason they go off track in a certain spot or bypass the catch fences, or who knows what could happen when you're going at those speeds, at those differences. You're putting fans at risk as well for debris flying off, especially when you have such high impacts. And you're just not doing yourself any kind of service. It's not racing. This is power deployment. That's all it is. You're working in a power station. Do you have enough power? Do you not have enough power? It's not about, can you take corners well? Who's got more balls going into a certain section? It's all about, who can last longer, right? And it's just not good for the racing. It doesn't make for good viewership. It's not as fun to watch anymore. I'm still going to watch, but it's not as fun anymore. It's just, you have moments, and then it's just not like you're just not as engaged. But yeah, that's it for me. It's my piece. We'll get back to this next week. I know next week we have no more races until Miami, which is the first weekend in May, I believe. So we have nothing until Miami. But next week we will be back. Me and Sabrina back in the seats, back to an actual conversation here instead of me just feeling like I'm just in my own head. So yeah, so that's it. Grab a fresh set, and we'll see you next week.